Say, good Erev Shabbos. Thank you for accommodating the later start. I figured with Mincha Ma'ariv ending this time, if this food would be out at the same time as Mincha Ma'ariv, there wouldn't be a minyan. There wouldn't be a minyan. So to safeguard the continuity of services here at the shul, figure push here a little bit. We'll have to whatever. We can't do this every week because this manam is still getting later. But at least for tonight it worked out. I will say a very special thank you to Reb Nechemia Feldman, who was our mashke sponsor for tonight's commemoration of his father's yahrzeit. So his yahrzeit name? Reb David ben Rameir. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, Meretz Hashem, the Neshama should have an aliyah, the family in Nechama. There is no doubt that there's a Gemara that says Bra Mizake Abba, that a son ultimately provides an ongoing zechus for his father. Even when the father is no longer in this world, the son continues his work. No doubt that Nechemia is certainly that kind of son who was Mekayim Bra Mizaka Abba each and every day. Father, Machshava Lichta Gan Eden, and Hashem B'Yamel It's Yosha for your mishpacha. A very special thank you to Reb Tzvi Friedman for the Chavra. There's even like authentic Yerushalmi.
It's pretty
right. I mean, like this is like somebody thought it was a shtreimel. It's not even a shtreimel. Like it's Yerushalmi.
It truly is a Chassidus. Wow.
It's beautiful. Chavra, you should just know, like when Reb Tzvi does this, like it's just. He doesn't go into work. He cancels all family obligations.
I can tell he's not busy. He's not busy during the day. He has a lot of time.
Tzvi, on behalf of the entire shir, thank you so very much. Thank you. All right, so let's continue. Let's continue tonight. We have a beautiful, beautiful shir ahead of us tonight. We're going to begin a piece tonight, which in Meretz Hashem is really going to take us over the next 2 weeks. This week, and next week. I know I mentioned last week I was supposed to be in Eretz Yisrael this week. But Chassidus Chaburah has other plans. But if you can't be in Eretz Yisrael, at least to be able to learn the Piazetzna together on an Erev Shabbos Kodesh with beautiful chaverim and a beautiful spread is it's the next best thing to Eretz Yisrael. The next best thing to Eretz Yisrael is what we have here Thursday nights, Baruch Hashem. So let's begin. We're picking up on page 41. Page 41, Os Yud Ches. So let's. Come on, you want to?
No, I'm going to listen.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'll say. So we're gonna. I made reference a little bit to this last week And in Meretz Hashem, this you really have the opportunity to ayin a little bit, and you're going to see. I've found that I know I say every week that this piece of the Piazetzna is the most profound piece. This week you're going to see is something a little bit different that I think for many of us is going to open up a whole new world of understanding. So let's take a look. Isa b'Sefer Beis Aaron. So over here again, the Piazetzna goes on the Sefer Beis Aaron of Aaron Karliner, who says ala pasuk Teshuri mirosh amana. So this is a pasuk from Shir Hashirim. So the literal translation of the pasuk is Teshuri mirosh amana, means look out, or gaze mirosh amana, from the top of the mountain of Amana. That's the pasuk. Now, without getting into the Pashat Pshat, because this is a Chassidus here, we don't need Pashat Pshat, right? We bypass Pashat Pshat. So Rabbi says, so the Piazetzna quotes from the Beis Aaron, says, V'zel Shna Kodesh. He quotes over here in Yiddish, Tigares Temuna, 5 foot hot, is Zingin Derosh Darfun. So the Beis Aaron essentially says as follows. He darshans it a little bit differently. He says, Teshuri Mirosh Amana. He says, Teshuri is the same notion of shira, song. What's the role of song in Yiddishkeit? And Rabbi said, by the way, song, we're going to use a lot of words, but we're going to use them interchangeably. We're going to use the word song, we're going to use the word music, and we're really using them interchangeably. Nigun, all interchangeably. So look what the Beis Aaron says. Teshuri, shira, rosh emuna. The highest form of emuna that a Jew could express is in the form of shira. There is nothing higher than song. There is nothing higher than music. Teshuri, shira, merosh emun, a little bit of a play on words, is the rosh, is the height, is the pinnacle, is the apex of all emun. I will say now the truth is, even before we go on with this, the truth is we know, it's actually tomorrow's Daf Yomi, we're going to talk about this. It's not an accident that the most profound parts of the Torah are shira. Right? Remember again, you have Az Yashir, that's going to be in tomorrow's Daf Meretz Hashem, when Klal Yisrael crosses the Yam Suf, Az Yashir Moshe Bnei Yisrael Hashira Hazos. Why Shira? Right? Again, Parshas Ha'azinu, which effectively is Moshe Rabbeinu's covenantal song between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael, a Shira. There's something unique. Whenever the Torah Kedosha wants to express something that is just dramatically beyond the power of the spoken word, we use shira. So that's the pshat of the Beis Aaron. Teshuri merosh amana. Shira song is the highest form of emuna. But let's analyze it. So I think for many of us, what I found very exciting about this piece is we knew this even before the Piazetzna said it. Right? How did we know it? Because we've experienced it. Because of us, I think for many of us, if somebody were to ask you, when was the most spiritual moment of your entire life? I would bet that chances are it involves shira. It involves shira in some way, shape, or form. So here, all the Rebbe, what the Beis Aaron is doing is, the Beis Aaron is framing it in the context of a pasuk. Teshuri, shira, merosh emuna, is the highest form of emuna. So let's analyze. He says, Ein kavanoso, levar es inyan hanegina, va'olam hanegina bazeh. So again, to be clear, the Piazetzna says, the goal of the Beis Aaron was not to explain the concept of negina, the concept of music, and the world of music. Others will say, I want to point out that in Chassidus, you'll find many things written about music. For example, Rabbi Nachman says, the highest level of ruchnius, the highest level of spirituality that a person could reach, is the level of nigun. That's what the Rebbe says. The level of nigun, the level of song. Now what nigun means in the world of Rabbi Nachman is a whole discussion as well. But I'm just pointing out, this is not unique to the Beis Aaron, not unique to the Piazetzna. And he says, our goal over here is not to explain, ultimately again, what music is and the world of music. Kidibarnu ata rak ech yedale kol ish be'eza matzav shu. I will say, the beauty of this sefer, Piazetzna says, we have one singular purpose, one singular goal. What's our singular goal in this entire sefer? He says, right, ech yedale kol ish be'eza matzav shu, mayim chaim kar nishmaso. I will say there's one goal. What's the one goal? The one goal is how to draw out water from your soul. See, the Rebbe says it's such a beautiful metaphor. The Rebbe says, the soul is like a well, right? You could have an incredible well, but the well only does something if what? Or the well is only meaningful if what? You're able to draw into the water, right? In other words, if you have a well that has an endless supply of water, but you don't have a bucket and you don't have a rope, you could sit there and admire the well until you die of thirst, right? But the well. So the Rebbe says each of us has this neshama, and the neshama contains so much, such a volume of beautiful, sweet waters of ruchnius. And what's our greatest problem of life? The greatest problem of life is I don't have a bucket. Or I have a bucket, but I don't have rope. Right? I'm lacking the mechanisms through which I could access the water. I will say, he has not used this mushal so far. The entire series, these many metaphors. To me, this is beautiful. This is it. I will say, this is it. What's my greatest problem in life? See, I will say, we often think the mistake we often make is that we have to acquire spirituality. You don't have to acquire anything. Rather, what do you have to? It's not acquire. What do you have to do? Wrong word. Not acquire, but
tap into
access. Access. Not acquire, but access. Because acquire makes it sound like there's something you're lacking, and now you have to get that. That's not the case. We already spoke about this in the Piaget's now, right? This was 2 weeks ago we spoke about this. Each of us is sitting on a repository, on a deep reservoir of holiness. It's not the problem that I lack holiness. I have it all inside of me. I'm brimming with it. I was born with it. My challenge is I go through life and I don't access it, right? I will say, because you can't go ashur without talking about Shalosh Shuddis, right? So what happens? When I come to Shalosh Shuddis, all I see is it's right, the chair, good. Tuna and egg salad, right? That's what I see. Maybe even the same one from last week. It could be the same one, right? No, I'm just kidding. Chas v'shalom. Quinoa. We did have quinoa this past week, which was that was wrong. That was what? It was Pesach.
Quinoa?
I thought it was left over from a sisterhood event or something.
Yeah,
quinoa. Who's eating? Come on, who's eating quinoa? Enough of that. You eat it on Pesach because again, there's nothing else. But and anyway, so what's the great challenge? The great challenge is all I see is the tuna fish and egg salad, and meanwhile, again, I could see the chariot. The problem just is I'm not accessing. It's not acquire. Both say, so you change the lexicon. We always speak about acquiring Kedusha, acquiring holiness. You don't have to acquire anything. Anything and everything you need already exists inside of you. The problem is access. I have to access it. So the Piaget says, that's our goal, right? That's our singular goal. Our goal is to figure out how to access the deep well of spirituality which exists within each of us. And I will say, what's my goal? I want to find my inner voice. Such as Lashon Desig is so beautiful. To literally, again, to uncover, to expose, to discover my inner voice. The Kol HaChai, the living voice which exists inside of me. So again, say for the Piaget that says, the only reason we're speaking about music, right? We could talk much about music and the power of shir and the power of negina and the power. We can see all. Piaget says, what's our goal? Our goal is to try to figure out how to access the well, right? That's my goal. So therefore, the Piaget, let's stay focused. Now look what he writes. So I will say, obviously, before we go on, what we know already from the Beis Aaron is that clearly shira is going to play or can play a major role in the accessing of my spiritual waters. Song, music can play a pivotal role in accessing my inner well. That's what I know. So I will say, so the Piaget says, now before we go on, he'll say, now, you could listen to this. You can say, okay, music, song could play a pivotal role. But here's the problem. Halo roam anu chazonim, umenagnim gidolim, shalibam rachok me Hashem. Ein emuna, ve'ein leiv rachman al-islam. I will say, there are plenty of people who have very good voices, right? They could sing very nicely, right? They could hold the tune, they could hold the key, they could hit this note and this, that, right? But there's not ruchnius there. There's not ruchnius there. So they could put on a wonderful performance, but that's what it is. So what the Piagetz is saying is, you're going to listen to this, you're going to say, oh, Megina is so powerful, Shira is so powerful. But one second, there are people who seem to have mastered, right, Shira, but yet they're not spiritual people. So how do you reconcile that? He says, "Va'afilu beina akum yesh meragnim." By the way, it's not like music is uniquely Jewish either, right? There are plenty of non-Jews who are musically talented. So how can you say that music or shira, song, is the way that I access my inner spiritual waters, when often song is not used for spiritual purposes, right? And
when a song hits you, no matter what it is, people say that it has there's soul to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's soul to it. It hits you I feel like on a spiritual level. Even if it's just a certain sound or a certain type of instrument, it resonates. It has soul.
But don't you think that it depends who it comes from? Doesn't that play a role in it? In other words, when people say, I don't know, I would think that when people say that music has soul, I'm assuming that there must be something they're sensing deep down from the singer.
Yeah.
It could be an experience that the song is associated with.
Right.
I heard a silly song in the car the other day that my father loved, that I started crying, and I sent it to my sister. She's like, I'm putting the kids to bed, I can't listen to it. It's such a trite song.
But you associate it with something else,
right? But it brings up the wellspring.
But the truth is, that association you could find with everything. You know, let's say, I'll tell you, I once read about this. I was reading a biography of Sigmund Freud. Oh, this is going back long ago. And interestingly enough, one of the first cases that put him on the map is totally not related to anything we're learning, but just because Steve mentioned it, was a young woman came to him, and she could not remove the smell of burning bread. Everywhere she went, she smelled burning bread. She went to doctors, they thought it was a medical issue, nothing. So to make a very long story short, what Freud discovered was this woman worked in a bakery. She worked in a bakery, and her boyfriend of a number of years showed up at work one day and told her, we're breaking up. She got so lost in her pain that the bread burnt. Mm-hmm. So that association. So I'm just bringing it up. Right. So association you could have with burnt bread, you could have with music. I think with the Piagetna, and Rabbi Yaakov, I think to the idea with soul, I would think that that's still somewhat tied ultimately to the person, but maybe not. But again, I think what the Piagetna saying is, the point is, you could find powerful music, beautiful shir and negina, that doesn't come from holy sources. So how does that work? If shira itself is one of the most powerful ways to access your inner spiritual waters, then I would think that by definition, anyone and everyone associated with shira should be holy. But yet that's not the case. So how do you reconcile that? So the Rebbe says, in Caroline, Rabbi Yaakov, I think the truth is Piagetna is saying really what you're saying. He says, Ki anigun hurak min gilui hanefesh v'hergosh osel. What music is, Rabbi say, is gilui nefesh. There is something about music that is inherently spiritual. Right? In other words, what the Rebbe is saying is that is true independent of who sings it. Right? There's just something about the dynamic of music that by definition is inherently spiritual. He says, Gilui nefesh. It reveals some hidden part of the soul, and feelings. So I will say, really, it's two things over here. Music touches on 2 points. Number one, the neshama, the soul spirituality, and emotion. And what the Rebbe is saying is that could be true even if it comes from a source that's not particularly holy. Right? There could be a tune. There could be a nigun. There could be a nigun that by definition just touches you, but at the end of the day it does come from, because music has that power to again touch the soul, touch emotion. Umiskala bedibor shemedabra ishal chavero es machshavosav hagashosav shal tsar v'shal simcha va'odio sebekolo. And sometimes, ultimately, again, what music has the ability to bring out is that the same way Rabbi say, like, if you're having a particular challenge and you talk it out with someone, talking something out with someone allows you to crystallize how you're feeling. Right? That's the power. Right? That's the power of talking things through. Right? Is that often I say sometimes like the best therapists, right, don't have to necessarily tell you any great itzah. What they're just doing is they're just creating the space for you to talk through these issues. Because often in life, for whatever the reason, I'm just not able to work it through. So somehow I come to someone else's office, I sit there, they have a nice couch, it's quiet, there's nothing else going on in my life, I talk for an hour, and so I'm like, wow, thank you. The therapist's like, no problem, just pay at the door, right? Right? But Lamaisa, there's a chachma to it. Because what the therapist is doing is providing the atmosphere in which you could do the work you need to do. So that says something amazing. The same way that we're often able to achieve clarity and understand ourselves and our feelings when talking to someone else, music has the ability to do the same thing. Sometimes hearing the right nigun, hearing the right music, could give me the type of clarity that I get through talking something out with another person. Such an incredible idea. And I will say, it's true. Anyone who's ever had one of these musical moments knows that sometimes the clarity one could feel in a moment of shira, the comparison is a good one. Sometimes the only other time you really could feel that is when you're sitting down with someone who you love, or at least if you don't love them, you trust them, and you're just talking the whole thing through, working the whole thing through until you have complete clarity. He goes on, we'll say he brings a raya over here. We'll say, listen to this is incredible. What happens when the pain in life becomes too much? What happens when the pain in life becomes too much? So I will say, what happens? Ultimately, a person can't talk anymore. They can't talk anymore. So we'll say, what happens in life when the pain becomes so much and you can't talk anymore? So what do you do? Something amazing. I was in Queens today. I had to pay a Shiva visit today. And so once I was in Queens, I went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Ohel. I try to go whenever I'm in New York. So I was there, and there was this person who was davening next to me, and he was saying to him, and I'm saying my Tehillim, and I hear, like, I'm listening, like the emotion is building in his voice, like the words become more strained, until like he just closed the Tehillim, and I just started crying. He just started crying, and you could tell, like, it was the type of cry, it was so heartbreaking. It was just filled with so much intense pain. You know, sometimes a person doesn't have to say anything, and you hear in the cry, you know, there's crying and there's sobbing. And there's sobbing. And there's crying of happiness. And there's a crying of like elevation. And then there's a crying of just brokenness. This was a cry, at least it sounds like a cry of brokenness. The Piagetna says, isn't it interesting that when we reach like the height of emotion, in this context, pain, you don't use words. You don't use words. They will say, what is it? It's crying. By the way, what's crying? What's bechia? Crying is another form of shira. See, I will say, shira is the expression of sound, often without words. That's a nigun. Crying is the holiest nigun. Crying is the holiest nigun. So everybody's, I have this nigun, that nigun. The holiest nigun of the Jew is bechiyas, crying. And the Piagetna says it's not by accident. What does that show you? Look at the words again. He says, "Shekasher tiskaber tzaro shala adam chas v'shalom." When a person's sorrow, a person's pain becomes so intense, I can't talk anymore. Rak tzoek ubocha b'kolo levad. Ultimately, again, all I could do. Again, tzoek means cry out. Bocha means cry. Rabbi Batikar is, I'm using my kol. I'm not using my words. I'm not using words. I'm using sound, right? I'm using negina. I'm using shira, a different form of shira. Lochein, hanigon, shu kolos, page 42. Shakolos smechin omeririm. So remember again, that's why shira, what's shira? Shira is sound or music. And by the way, it could be happy sounds, smechim, or it could be bitter sounds. In other words, when we say bitter, sad sounds. But I will say one thing is clear, which is ma'ora es hargashos ha'adam. The power of music And when I'm using the word music, but music makes it sound like instruments, the power, and that's why I'm using these words interchangeably. Music, song, nigun, the power of music, song, nigun is that it's ma'orer es hargasha sa'adam. It awakens emotion. It awakens emotion. Right? That's, music creates an emotional experience. Shebahem, nitzotze ve'erei hanefesh mizkal. I'm both saying, here's what's incredible. What happens when you create an emotional experience for yourself? What does that do? That awakens the soul. Shabbos say, remember again, what is the whole, right? Remember again, the PHS, the words that I've been teaching us over the last couple of weeks. And again, the Rebbe was teaching us that the truth is what we're looking for is not going to be found through intellect. It's not going to be found through intellect. It's going to be found through the soul. It's going to be found through emotion. So the power of music is, music doesn't speak to the intellect. I don't know, maybe to music people, I don't know, when you hear a piece of music, do you think about, oh, he really hit that note, he hit that note, that's a this. I don't know, maybe the music people feel that way?
No.
Yes, you are. Okay, but fine, all right. You're a humble music guy. All right, right.
No.
No, right? I'm seeing like
if it touches you, it touches you.
Right. So I was even though, again, it wasn't, just to be clear, there is so much chachma in music. Right? There's so much wisdom in music, right? Sometimes you hear like a piece of music and you're like, oh my gosh, like the wisdom that went into this, the feeling that went into this. And yeah, you have to know how to compose the notes, the right instruments, this, that. Of course, there's intellect in everything. But the power of music is not that it touches my intellect. Right? It's not, I will say, by the way, I do think that sometimes this could be the difference, but there is intellectual music. I wonder sometimes, I don't know this to be true, but I wonder, I don't personally enjoy classical music. It doesn't do it for me. But it's interesting, over the years, I've heard people who are fond of classical music speak about the composition. Right? The composition is an impressive composition. Right? The chachma about the composition. Again, I'm not a music person, so I don't know. So I think there is such a thing as intellectual music. There is such a thing. Again, not to say that classical music can't touch the heart. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I do think that there is
you can like it on a intellectual level.
Correct, on a skill level. I'm impressed.
You can appreciate it even though it's not
right.
your thing.
I'm impressed with Beethoven's whatever, again, it might not speak to my soul, but it's a masterful musical composition. That's not what the PhD is talking about over here. What he's talking about over here is music as a yes.
I was wondering, we're using the word song and music interchangeably, but is there not a difference between listening and singing?
There doesn't have. In other words, I don't know. It could be. I'll tell you, the Piaget doesn't seem to be making that distinction right now. Right? That's what I'm saying. He's using a lot of words interchangeably. I don't know. I mean, you're saying the difference between being active versus passive.
Meaning I could listen to a song and relate to it and feel it, and I could also sing a song and relate to it.
Right, 100%. I think either way, active versus passive, but I think either way, his point would be the same, which is, whatever way you're interacting with that music, one thing that's happening is a soulful awakening. It could, you're probably right, it could absolutely be different depending on active versus passive. Absolutely. So let's go back there. So he says as follows. He says, Aval in otechreya. I'm sorry. That's good. Aval in otechreya mayasa ish b'shashim ragi. So now watch this. See, here's what I know. Right? Here's what I know. What I know ultimately, again, is that music has the ability to awaken this sense of feeling. And I will say, to use the Piaget's metaphor, the music can be the incredible vehicle that allows me to access the beautiful waters of spirituality that are in my well. Music is my bucket. Music is my bucket and my rope. Music is what... Now, again, it's not the only bucket and rope, but it is a bucket and rope that allows me to access. Now, watch this. Shabbos says, so now music creates this spiritual awakening. Now, watch the Piaget says, Aval in od hechreya mayasa ish b'shash misragesh umayifal b'chilek nefsho sheskavos. It's incredible. All music does is awaken emotions. Rabbi say, now what's the shaila? What are you going to do with the emotional awakening? Again, just to be clear, so now I'm in a heightened sense of feeling, right? A heightened sense of emotion. But says the Piaget, all that's been created is this revelation, is this heightened sense. But what do I do with it? He says, Kimo sheyeshnam shnei anashim smichim. This is incredible. You could have two people who are both happy. This is a fantastic, incredible piece. Zeh mosif b'simchaso la'avodas as Hashem. One person takes his happiness and uses his inherent simcha to further his service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'zeh samech b'simcha shel hololus. Whereas another person, I will say, is simcha, is also happy, but his happy is hololus. So how would you translate hololus? Frivolity. Frivolity. I will say, which means, I'll give you an incredible mashal. You see a guy dancing at a wedding. Right? And mamish, like he's dancing, and his kishka's out, right? Dancing. I'll say, how would you characterize that person? How would you characterize him?
Depends on the dancing.
Depends on the appropriate dancing, right? I was like, happy. What kind of happiness?
Simcha, like ruach.
Ruach, right? Kedusha. So we'll say it depends, right? What does it depend on? If he's been hitting the bar, since the Shmorgasbord, right, and he's just out of his mind and he's just dancing, so we'll say that's called hololus. That's called frivolity. Versus if he's of sound mind and is deciding to go ahead and participate in the simcha of chassan and kala, that's simcha. Simcha means a simcha shel kedusha. So I will say, so in life often it's difficult to discern the difference. So I will say, how do you know the difference between simcha of hololus versus simcha of kedusha? How do you know the difference? There's one core difference. Rabbi Nachman speaks about this. The simcha of hololus usually means you're running from something. The simcha of kedusha is you're running to something. Right? So I'll say a person is all in a good mood, happy, go lucky. Why? Because he had a bunch of l'chaims. What kind of simcha is that? Generally, when a person only reaches a state of simcha through a couple of l'chaims, I will say that's generally indicative that they're running from something. So I need something to mask the pain. I need something to go ahead and kind of like black out that which is happening in my life, and that'll be with simcha. I say that simcha of hololus is a simcha that comes about because you're running away from something. Simcha of kedusha is a simcha that comes about because I'm running towards something. And often the ability to discern the difference between the two is not so easy. Like I said, that the guy dancing at the wedding is the perfect example, right? You can look at him, wow, it's so beautiful. He's being mesameach chassan v'kala. Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe yes, maybe no. Yes.
So as we talk about enhancing the feeling of what a song does to bring emotion, does the environment play a role as well? For example, I'm in shul, I listen to Hallel, I'm blown away. Or today, you're at yoga, you're in that environment, it raises the environment.
100%. Again, but I don't know that the Piaget's is even getting into that right now, because I think, yes, just like it makes a difference if you're passive or active, there are so many things that could amplify the Shira experience. I think what the Piaget's is trying to do is kind of speak about Shira almost like just in a vacuum. Could there be amplifiers, modifiers, differences in experience? Of course. Just like, by the way, David, two people could hear the same song and have two very different reactions. I mean, even if they're both inspired, one person's inspiration will look one way. So there's so many variables. He's talking, I think, trying to frame for us a framework, an abstract framework. And although abstract framework is intellectual, right? But the abstract framework is that Shira is the bucket and the rope to your well of a spirituality. Shira is one of the ways in which we can access that inner reservoir of holiness. Look, he goes on. Suppose it's very important. So all Shira does is it throws the bucket into the well, and now you can go ahead and bring out the water. Now, you still have to decide what? What are you going to do with water? What are you going to do with it? In other words, to be clear, accessing spiritual energy is only the first part of the process. That's part one. That's part one. Now that you've accessed it, now I have to decide ultimately what am I doing with it. He goes on, he says, so nigun, as we said before, is one of the keys, which ultimately again opens up and awakens the neshama, the nefesh, and ultimately the feelings associated with it. He says, "Yochol liyos ish sheposeach es nafsho." You can have a person who opens up his soul. right? The soul is opened up. The chelik mimena yotze lechutz. Part of his spiritual energy is revealed. Umikol makom lo levad sheina ose bo meuma elaod pogea bechelik nafsho zeh im besimcha shel hololus or b'shviras halev shel atzos yeyosh. Rabbi said, this is incredible. The Piaget writes, sometimes you could access your spiritual energy, but not necessarily do the right thing with it. So imagine the following situation. A person hears shira, right, a song, whether you're singing, you're listening, whatever the mitzvah, you're in shul, you're out, whatever it is, you shira, and now again, I feel like the bucket with the rope has just been thrown into the well of my spirituality. So now I'm pulling up that ruchnius, I'm pulling up that holiness. So now a person could use it, or a person could squander it. So he gives examples. What do you mean, for example, squandering it? He says sometimes you just don't do it. Do you know what the greatest challenge of inspiration is? There are those moments where the bucket has been thrown down into the well, and now you're crank. What do you call that thing? The crank. Good. Right, good. Excellent. So that's the technical term, right? You're cranking. You're pulling. No, there's a better term for it. No, the thing.
The turner.
The turner.
It's a southern term.
The turner, right? Good. Okay, the crank, right? Whatever. But you're pulling it up. So we'll say. So now, remember again. So now you have that revealed spiritual energy. He'll say, so what happens? So many things happen. Sometimes people just take the water in the bucket, and what do they do? They just leave it there. Or sometimes worse, they spill it out. The boss says, that's ridiculous. It's not true. How many times does it happen that we have inspiration in life? The Rebbe says that if you have a moment of inspiration, the Rebbe says, you know what you should do? He says, open up a sefer. He says, even open up a chumash and just read a pasuk. Even if it's Vaidaber Shal Moshe Lemar. Why? Because the Rebbe says what you've just done is you've taken your inspiration and you've plugged it into something concrete. Right? Now, forever, you have that pasuk. That pasuk you read, that's yours. So when your inspiration is gone in 2 minutes from now, which is the way the inspiration works, you have something. So I want to say, so often in life we draw the waters up, but I don't plug it into anything. So if I don't plug it into anything, if I don't do anything with it, that's the equivalent of just leaving it in the bucket. Or worse, sometimes I take the inspiration, I plug it in the wrong way. I do the wrong thing, right? I could get involved in the simcha of hololus, which is even worse, because then I'm not even just leaving the water in the bucket, but I'm actively spilling it on the ground. So the Piaget says, just to be clear, this is it's interesting. We're actually going to learn something very similar tomorrow in Shara B'tachon. The piece we're going to do tomorrow is actually very similar to this idea that accessing the water is step one. Accessing the water is step one. I'm sorry?
Still trying to get past it.
I know, me too, right? Accessing the water is step one, right? Cranking it or cranking it up, right, is step two, right? And then ultimately, which is really, 1 and 2 are really the same thing. But then the next step I will say is, okay, so what am I doing with it? Now what? There's a bucket full of spirituality. There's a bucket full of emotion. There's a bucket full of holiness. Now what? So the Rebbe says, he goes on, he says, I will say now even worse. I will say sometimes people also use emotion in all the wrong ways. We're going to talk about this more. I will say, but sometimes emotion fuels a sense of sadness. See, I will say, understand, we're going to stop with this tonight, but the Yetzer Hara works in all kinds of ways. And one of the things, when did we speak about this? Did we speak about this? Maybe on Shabbos? Past Shabbos? I don't know. Okay. We spoke about this sometime recently. The Yetzer Hara works in all kinds of ways. Oh, yeah, Gachon. So by Morty Miller's Bar Mitzvah. Right? That the way the Yetzer Hara works, the way the Yetzer Hara works is the Yetzer Hara just tries to derail any positive momentum you may have. Right? So Lemaisa, like, everybody thinks the Yetzer Hara, the job of the Yetzer Hara is to get you to sin. No. The Yetzer Hara gets me to give up on myself. Because the moment I give up on myself, then what? Then the truth is anything is... If I give up on myself, so of course I could do any Aveira. Why? Because it doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want. Shabbos says something incredible, that sometimes, listen to how profound this is. Sometimes when there's a surge of emotion, how does the Yetzer Hara try to derail that? by diverting that emotion into a sense of sadness and despair. Right, I will say, if you think about it, by the way, overwhelming emotion, just a moment, overwhelming emotion, overwhelming inspiration, often like hovers in between unbridled optimism and a sense of despair and sadness. Right? Yeah. Anyone ever feel that? I know. When we were on the Yarchei, right? And I'm sorry, despair. No. I'm saying we had experiences like this that without getting into it, but like you have these incredible, overwhelming moments of inspiration, and yet for some reason you feel like a tinge of sadness. Now that tinge of sadness sometimes is, I'll never be able to recreate this. I'll never truly measure up. I'll never become the best version of me. And you're like, why am I feeling this now? Right? This is a good moment. Right? This is a good moment. This is when things are going well. So why is it that in some of the most inspired moments, I feel a certain sense of sadness? That's the Yetzer Hara. That's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is trying to derail that surge of emotion that could be used towards positivity. So the Piagetz says, so now you have Shira. Shira allows you to uncover that sense of emotion. So now you're cranking up, right? You're pulling everything up, fantastic. So now pulling it up is only the first part. Now you have to plug it in. So you have to avoid using it in the wrong way and also allowing that emotion to be diverted into a sense of sadness and despair. Yes?
I'm not clear because it seems to me, for the most part, there's two aspects to a song. The nigun, the tune, and the words. It seems like he's addressing the tune, but isn't many times something that you really derive the benefit from is using the nigun to better appreciate the word. But that doesn't seem to be what he's saying.
Not al pi Chassidus. Al pi Chassidus, the highest level of song is a nigun without words. That's because the power, a word is limited. Right? A word is limited. Right? A word has a definition. A word has a meaning. A word has a description. So the spoken word. I'll give you an example. You ever tell your wife you love her?
All the time.
Excellent. Good. That was a test. Excellent. Good. By the way, it's recorded. She can access. We'll give her the timestamp and everything. Nechemi, let me ask you a question. Does that's it? You started this. Right? No. But let me ask you, just on a serious note, does the word "I love you" do justice to the way you feel about your wife?
Of course not.
No, because that's the limitation of words, right? The limitation of words is you want to ask me, how do I feel about my wife? I could use words that exist in language. I could use words like that. Is there any word or string of words that captures how I feel? No. I love my children. Is there anything, when that's why when kids are little, right? When you have little children, it's the cutest thing. They want to tell you how much they love you. What do they say? Like, I love you this much, right? This much. Because why? Because even as a child also understands that I love you is a word. So in their simple, you see, I will say, what's the whole goal? The whole goal in life is to be a child. The whole goal in life is to be pashat. Even a child understands. My parents want to tell you that I love you, but love is a word. A word is finite. So how do I show you that I love you even more than any word could say? So in their own simple pashat way, they stretch out their arms this much. See, that's why in Chassidus, the highest level of Shira is nigun, without words. Without words, because as beautiful as words are, and as meaningful as words are, and there's no question, you're right, many times for us in the Shira, it's actually, again, sometimes it's the tune, and sometimes it's actually the words. Well, I think what the Rebbe is describing over here is the highest level of Shira, which is just nigun. Because that is, first of all, without words, there's no intellect, right? The use of language, by definition, is intellectual. So if you remove the words, there's no intellect. And a nigun, what does a nigun mean? What does a nigun mean? What does a nigun mean? Right? It can mean whatever you want it to mean, right? It means different things to different people. Words are words, right? There's only so many definitions that you could give to it. I guess, unless you're a politician. You're right, by the mice, like for regular people, right? There's only so many definitions you could give to a particular word, right? But a nigun, limitless. So the Rebbe goes on. He says as follows. He says, "In besimcha, God, ad shenofa min bitchono v'amunosa va'osa gam masim shal yesu." Fine, we'll see. We're going to stop over here for tonight. It's already 10 after 9. We'll stop over here for tonight. Shabbos again. We're going to continue Miras Hashem in this next week. But again, just to kind of summarize and to bring this together. Piaget's introducing us to, based on the base Aaron, the pasuk ultimately that tells us to shuri meirosh hamana, the highest level of emunah, ultimately again is shira. Because Shira will say again, if we understand that the challenge we have in life is not acquiring, challenge we have in life is accessing, and Shira is one of the ways in which we have the ability to access our innate holiness. But accessing the holiness is only part one. After I access it, then figuring out how to properly use it and not to waste it, that becomes even a bigger challenge. We'll stop over for tonight. Shkoyach everyone. In Meretz Hashem, we're not finished with this. Much more to do in Meretz Hashem next week. Incredible. Shkoyach.
Have some time to meet tomorrow.
I can't. I'm traveling. Phone calls.